The Peace Fight, Round 4. The course where we in this video will examine the Bishop's battle. So let's just jump into it. I have two examples that I really want to share with you. One is where I beat an Indian Grandmaster, which we're gonna see after the first example. So that's kind of a teaser. But let's jump to the first game. A game that I won against an international master, which really shows the Bishop battle. How should we approach this position from the Peace Fight method? Well, first we have to look at the minor pieces, of course. White has bishop pair and a knight, and black has two knights and a light squared bishop. It's very important to recognize which kind of squares these bishops go on. Then we look at pawn structure, where we look in the center, where the structure there looks that white has a weak square on d4. Regarding pawns, we can anticipate that white might play f4 pretty soon. Okay, when we look more at the pawn structure, we also see that around the white king, there's actually some weak squares there. And they all are light squares. And then we look at different possible exchanges of the minor pieces and keep those in mind when we start calculating a bit. For instance, let's try to take this one and queen takes back. And then we question ourselves, can we win the peace fight here between the two bishops? Because it's kind of what our analysis leads to, that if this exchange could be good, it could be good now. And one key thing about the peace fight here that I think about, can we make our position light square bishop friendly? It starts with putting the queen over here because it needs a playmate. As we spoke about earlier in the course, pieces works together with pawns and pawns works together with pieces. Therefore, how do we use our pawns to make our position light square bishop friendly? Yes, h5 and f5. A total game changer that really can make white's light squares very weak. So therefore, of course, I chose this in the game. And when he played f4, he should not be allowed to play f5. We want to play f5 and weaken those light squares, which sort of force him to close the position with e5, which makes his bishop look like a fool and ours look like a king. Because his bishop is looking into his pawn and ours can look at 32 light squares and think Mainly because white does not have a light squared bishop, so it's unopposed. White then shuffled his pieces around to cover the weak d4 square. Black activated his piece a little more. Generally, white has some coordination issues here. And since white played d4, it's even more accessible to go into the light squares now with bishop d5. And the difference between the bishops are very clear. Here I was trying to make a combination work, and it does. It's very specific. It exchanges a lot of pieces here. And then white has difficulties holding up to all the threats. Here it's both knight e2 check and g5 that will cost white dearly, simply because the bishop never really found a purpose in this game. In the game he tries a few tricks, but they don't really work, or they don't work at all because the bishop doesn't really have much to say. And here he lost a piece due to the fork. I think in this game you really saw the difference between the two bishops and the strategy we put to making our bishop the best. Let's jump to the Grandmaster game and jump into the middle game. I'm playing with the white pieces against Indian Grandmaster Sundar Shyam, who played Queen A7 with the idea of threatening on d4. What to do first? Yes, looking at the minor pieces. We have a bishop pair and he has a knight and a dark squared bishop. And since this episode is about the bishop's battle, we key in on that bishop because it has some weak squares to look forward to and perhaps a weak king. So there's a reason why black wants to play c takes d4. Okay, then we look at the pawn structure. White has a pawn majority on the king side and perhaps can push a little forward there. Regarding minor piece exchange, we have to think about who would benefit from this, because white can attack that e6 pawn with queen g4, but we have opened up for that rook, and rook f5 really seems to put a stop to white. Okay, so let's go back. Let's reverse that variation. That's often a good trick, by playing queen g4 first. Then I would only calculate the different possibilities of taking a d4. For instance, c takes d4. Then white will just kick back the bishop. And it gets a bit awkward for black here, since the threat to the knight is a little unpleasant. Okay, but the main line has to be knight takes d4 here. Of which the calculations we are calculating, we have to take the knight and he will take back. And how will we evaluate this crucial position? Because black has won a pawn and actually has two passed pawns in his center. He will push them and then the bishop and the queen can get active on the dark squares. While for white, he already has a bishop and a queen close to the king and a pawn majority close to the king as well. On top of that, a rook and e1. The position might seem equal, but white's next move, which is also a beauty move, will show that white is indeed in the driver's seat. The beauty move is bishop d3, which gives black's well-functioned machine a punctured tire. While white can proceed with the attack and can roll with the pawns and the queen and the bishop, I was so happy in the game here, because I really know that I had the game in my hand. First we make a little dent into black's kingside, and then we push our pawns to create a lot of pressure into the black king. I could perhaps have been a little more precise here, but I'm saved by that the bishop on d3 really gives a lot of time for white's attack. Here we should be careful, because black has a few possibilities of activating. However, this was anticipated and white wins back the pawn. Again, we have so much time here as white, so we can put in the pieces little by little here, simultaneously avoiding some exchanges, so we can proceed our attack. But we want to exchange some pawns there, so black has less pawns around the king, and then win a pawn. And black is forced to be passive, and we can proceed with activity, with a threat of rook takes g6 that is unstoppable. And here white is ahead with 2 pawns, or I'm ahead with 2 pawns, and here perhaps I got a little nervous because it's a grandmaster and time is short on time, because it looks a bit silly that my king is out there, but e6 crashes through. Like, you just make a lot of threats to the king and then you get through, or to the queen. I don't have that many comments to this, but I can say significant that our bishop is way better than his bishop in this attack, which is very common when you attack with opposite color bishops. And here that white has a crashing blow that you probably already seen it, rook f8 check. Because when you take back, we can take the queen. And fittingly to this theme, it is the bishop that takes the queen. And fittingly to this game, white keeps the bishop. And black resigned. If you have any questions to these games, please let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you in the next one.